those of us who actually would like to have some matters placed on the record of the House from the Minister. It is important that these questions that were raised post the report back. I mean, this is a truncated process that we've had. We've had a really good process in the committee, and it's kind of been ruined by the committee stages where I don't think that we're being treated fairly. We need to have the answers to the questions because this is the last time that they can be addressed, and I have asked reasonable questions, I believe, that were submitted to the Minister on Monday by the representative of Farmers Trading, Taxi Charge New Zealand, the New Zealand Taxi Federation and Telecom New Zealand, and it is about those parties that are not contemplated to be covered by the legislation. All we need is a very clear statement in the House from the Minister that the issues addressed in Part A of the email are addressed, and that the questions in Part B, which are new to me, they certainly weren't ones that I recall being raised at the Select Committee, whether they are addressed as well, either by amendment or by way of explanation. I don't really mind how the Minister deals with it, but it is important that it's dealt with because this is the last chance to get the legislation in its technically final form for the third reading later on this morning. I don't want it to go to this afternoon, which is the alternative. We just keep taking calls until we get the answers. The second issue that I want to raise, and it's one that I haven't spent any time on, and that's the QFE model. When I was the Minister, we designed the QFE model in order to provide a structure of responsibility that would sit around those that were employees and also, as this legislation highlights, those who are nominated representatives of the qualifying financial entities. And the way that it was designed to be structured was that if you were only advising in the Category 1 space for products of your own, and advising generally otherwise in the Category 2 space, then you wouldn't have to be individually authorised as a financial advisor. And a number of the banks came to see us at the Select Committee, and the banks, I thought, put a tremendous amount of effort into helping us get this right. And it was one of the influences at the Select Committee was coming back to that essential question: what was the risk that we were trying to address? And I kept coming back to there was one banking case that was kind of outstanding that ruined it for the rest of the banks. And here's the front page of the Herald this morning as we do the committee stages and final stages of this bill. $45 million investors win record fair trading payout for misleading claims. This was the advice that we have received at our Select Committee over and over again. People were duped into believing that the risk they were confronting was nowhere near the level of risk they actually found that was being imposed. They were told in many instances that it was as safe as keeping the money in the bank. And I think ANZ have let down the side, as it were, in terms of the banking industry, which has come out somewhat less scathed or virtually unscathed from the global financial crisis in terms of what's happened with the banking industry, deregulated in an international environment but very well prudentially supervised by the Reserve Bank here in New Zealand with very strict rules around them. And of course those prudential rules now are applying to the non-bank deposit sector, and no, we didn't apply those rules in time, but I don't know how you can apply something in time when you're only starting the consultation around the actual provisions of the non-bank deposit takers, the review of financial products and providers in the year that the first three collapses occur, and that you announce the results of the Cabinet decisions on those 1 month before Bridgecorp collapsed. You know, I mean, I must have been the unluckiest minister in history, I guess, to hold the portfolio at that time. But I think it's unreasonable to do that, and actually nobody's really done the blame game thing because, I mean, we inherited a regulatory wasteland. It took us a long time to get lots of regulation in place, and we did a lot of regulation, Mr Chairman, in the financial sector. And when it came to the crunch, both parties agreed to work together. And that's the way that we have proceeded. It proceeded that way in government. We had a letter from the now Prime Minister of New Zealand addressed to the then Prime Minister of New Zealand offering that support. And I think it isn't necessary to play the blame game because we are both responsible as regulators in the parliamentary sense to get this right, and I think we have worked very well together in order to improve the legislation. So the QFE was designed to provide a true incentive to the organisations to take full responsibility for the training and for the delivery of financial advice that was at an institutional level appropriate to the needs of the customers. And we have got all sorts of protections written into the law, but essentially the QFE risks losing their QFE status if they get it wrong. And I think that is an incredibly powerful incentive, and that's why I was very much in favour of finding a mechanism for ensuring that the banks and other institutions could take responsibility for what they were doing on the job when it was their own product. We said no to outside products, and I think we said no to the outside products for very good reason. And the headline news in the New Zealand Herald is that very good reason. And I think there is a risk when you've got part-branded products, as in the ANZ ING product, you have real risks that people who are telling people what to do with their money are actually not seeing the degree of risk that they're actually confronting. So I would like the Minister and the Chair, getting a bit depressed about this now, but to answer some questions about it, and I do so genuinely because it's not a question of satisfying me and my position. We've referred the bill back to the House. We've done our work at the Select Committee. But I think it would be wrong if issues that have been raised since the report back, given that we have virtually rewritten every single clause of the bill, that if people are still raising some concerns, this is the right place and the right time to raise them. And if the Minister could just read into the record what the answers to those questions are, it means that we know where we're going in terms of the future, and those that have raised those concerns will know that their concerns have been heard and that they've been responded to by the government. And as I said, I've read into the record what I understand to be the case in respect of one of those questions, but there are other questions that still remain unanswered, and I think it is very important that we get those questions answered at this opportunity, this last opportunity, before the legislation, of course, moves into its third reading and we are unable to correct it any further. So that, I think, is a reasonable summary of where I'm up to. I'm not saying that this is going to be my last call. I actually hope that it is, and if the Minister is able to provide us with the advice that I'm seeking on behalf of others, and I'm getting a warm indication that there is some work going on that will assist the House in the progress of this bill, and I'm well pleased to see that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.